Thanks, Julian. And thank you everybody who took the time to listen to this presentation today. I appreciate it. And thank you, Appeton, for setting up this conference. And I'll just go ahead and get right into it. So Desert Gold Ventures, Inc. is a gold exploration and gold resource development company. Our flagship project is situated in Western Africa, specifically in Western Mali. It's a regional project now at over 440 square kilometers of contiguous ground. So it's not broken up amongst a bunch of different land packages. It's a tier 1 mining jurisdiction. We're bracketed by 6 gold mines. 3 of them are world-class gold mines. And there's a smattering of deposits in the area as well. And we'll go over that, but we're bracketed by major producing mines to the north, to the south, and to the west as well. Management has been active in this part of the world, specifically myself and Don Dudek, for well over 10 years. I first started consolidating ground in this part of the world back in 2011. And we'll touch a little bit on that as well, and a little bit on Don's history. Don is a West African geo. He has experiences in other parts of the world as well, but he's had 2 recent successes, one in Burkina and one previously with Avian Gold, which is actually in this mining camp, an asset called Sagala West, or excuse me, Sagala Tabakoto, which was taken over by Endeavour and now owned by Algom, a private company. So our company came out with a maiden resource earlier this year of 1.1 million ounces of combined measured and indicated and inferred resource, the grade being around 1.4 grams. And we'll talk about that in a bit more detail as we go. Our Senegal Mali Shear Zone project is vast at over 440 square kilometers, and it's a target-rich environment. There are 23 plus gold zones confirmed by drilling to date. Virtually all of them are open, and they're of varying size, and we'll touch on that in more detail. And as well, we've got a pretty aggressive drill program planned for this coming work season, and we'll get into that as well. So corporately, we've got 162.2 million shares outstanding, non-diluted. There's 7.9 million options outstanding. And warrants, we've got 43 million warrants at a weighted average strike price of 28 cents. So fully diluted, there are 213.1 million shares outstanding. I touched on myself and Don's background. Our chairman, Sunny Janda, has been with myself and the company for quite some time. He represents a very significant group of shareholders who put a lot of money in the company. They together own more than 20% of the company. Chris Marsh, an independent director, a lot of experience in capital markets. Our in-country exploration manager, John Learn, he's an expat who's been in West Africa for well over 15 years. A lot of excellent operational experience on the ground there. So we've got a very good team in country as well. Touch on some of the major shareholders that you might be aware of. Merck Investments, a large fund out of the US. Ross Beatty, a well-known Canadian investor. You can see management and board owns a significant amount as well. Leeds Jones is a retail brokerage out of Vancouver. Grand Peak and Orca Capital are private investment companies that play in the space. So just to lay the land regionally, we are in Western Mali. There's basically 2 major mining camps in Mali. There's the Western Mali and there's Southern Mali, the Yanfalila Gold Belt being in the south, and the Senegal Mali Shear Zone and Main Transcurrent being in the west. So in 2019, which is the most recent production data we have for Mali, they produced 2.3 million ounces of gold. That number is significantly higher by now. I just don't have the official numbers. There's greater than 26 million ounces of reserves in country, and that number would have increased as well by some amount. So this is a very well-established mining jurisdiction. There are some major producers in the region like Barrick, B2, Endeavour, Resolute. And on the Senegal side, there was previously Teranga, which was taken over by Endeavour. So this is a very active mining camp, both from a mining, exploration, and M&A perspective. So this is a regional picture. I think this picture sort of does an excellent job of understanding why we are where we are and why we spent so much time consolidating land in this area. If you can see my cursor starting from the north, this gold band represents approximately where we think the Senegal Mali Shear Zone is. And it goes from north to south. And you can see the scale here, it's 25-kilometer scale here. So it's quite a large regional feature. And what's noteworthy is proximal to the east of this feature, every 30 to 50 kilometers or so, there are very large deposits. I mean, Yatela, give or take, is about 3 million ounces. Sadiola at its peak was 10 plus. As we go south, this is our project here, the Senegal Mali Shear Zone. And we control 44 kilometers of trend along this feature. And some, obviously some ground both to the east and west of it. Moving further south is Barrick Gold's Lula-Gounkoto mine complex. This was previously Randgold and was a very well publicized acquisition. And then off to the east here, you can see these two sister mines of Tabakoto and Sigala. That's where our technical director, Don Dudek, worked back in 2012 until they were bought out by Endeavour for a fairly significant amount. And then continuing to go south down the mine camp, B2 Gold's flagship Fekola mine, very good mine, very profitable. And then further to the south is IM Gold's Boto Diaka deposits. And then off to the east here, there's a secondary feature, which has a number of exploration companies that are quite active, like Roscan, and Osisko was active in that camp until they got bought out by B2 just a few months ago. The secondary feature that's noteworthy is the main transcurrent that's to the west and cuts through onto the Senegal side. And you can see that there's a number of operating mines here, Gora, Sabodala, and Massawa. That was previously Teranga until Endeavour bought them out quite recently. And then there's Resolute Mining's Mako mine, but there's also a series of deposits that are being developed as well. And so our property package is located in an area where these two regional features come closer together and start to interact. And we're seeing mineralization on our property related to both features, and we'll get into that in a little bit more detail. But needless to say, this is a very, very active mining camp. So this is just a zoomed in image of what I was just showing you of our Senegal Mali Shear Zone project. The background is analytical signal magnetics. And you can see where we've demarcated the Senegal Mali Shear Zone with this black dashed line, and we'll get into why that's important, and as well the main transcurrent here. The purple and yellow dots are golden soil anomalies. The purple dots are gold at greater than 200 ppb, and the yellow is 50 to 200 ppb. And we have soil samples running as high as 16,000 ppb or 16 grams gold. And those aren't grab samples, those are just soil samples. You'll also see these black stars here, which represent gold zones that have been confirmed through drilling. And then in the white boxes, you can see highlighted drill intercepts in terms of grade over width. The red circles represent the zones where our current resources come from, the 1.1 million ounces. And this image really is just meant to give you an understanding of regionally how prospective this area is for gold discovery. And you can also see the concentration of anomalism just east of the Senegal Mali Shear Zone. And I think that's probably the most prospective area, and it's certainly where we're seeing the most gold when we're drilling. But that being said, the main transcurrent also represents an excellent opportunity. We recently made a discovery there as well, which I'll get into in a bit more detail. So this is the resource statement by zone. And I won't go through it in detail. If you want to do so yourself, by all means. But I guess I'll just touch high level. The largest deposit we have on the property to date is Mogiafara South, and that's about a 400,000 ounce deposit. It's shallow. The average depth is about 70 vertical meters, and we think there's a very strong likelihood of that getting significantly bigger, and we'll get into a bit more detail as of why. Likewise, Gurbassi East and Gurbassi West are two sister deposits that sit very close to one another, and they're about 200,000 ounces each. And then there was another discovery we recently made last year, which is quite interesting as well. And it's a long trend with Gurbassi West, and we call it Gurbassi West North. The other feature that's noteworthy is this northeast trending feature that relates to the Lingakoto West zone, all the way up to Burana East and through SOA. This is a highly prospective zone. There's thousands of artisanal miners, and we've hit some very interesting grade over width, but we need to do more work there. And, you know, what are we looking for? Well, we're in elephant country, and that's really what we're looking for. We're looking to find a deposit that's going to be large enough to make a material difference to our shareholders. And we're seeing all the right things in terms of, you know, broad areas of mineralization. And really what we're looking for is a big system, a big wide system with economic grades. Because what the regional endowment shows is once you hook into something like that, they just tend to keep going and going. And so we're looking for a large enough gold system where a standalone mine can be built in this area. And in all likelihood, there will be a series of other smaller satellite deposits where you could feed a centralized mill. Whether we build it or we get taken out, we just have to do the exercise. It's the same work that needs to be done. So this is what we have planned for this season. And there is a number of drilling planned, 3 types of drilling: diamond, RC, and air core. And the yellow holes are demarcated. These are air core holes, and the RC is orange and the core is red. And the purple lines are auger. And the auger is essentially soil sampling, but a lot of this property, the geology is covered by laterite. And so a lot of these gold zones don't outcrop. And you can think of the laterite cover as just a blanket of topsoil or iron-rich clay. Most of the time, it's very, very hard, and it sits over the saprolite, and it can be anywhere between a couple meters thick to 14 or 15 meters thick. And in fact, the discovery we made recently at Gurbassi West was a discovery that was hidden under laterite, and it was made by running a fence of auger across that area and then following it up with the air core and RC drill. So our priority this season will be at Mogiafara South, at this Gurbassi West North corridor, and along this northeastern corridor here. You can see we're also allocating some meterage in this area as well. And that's because we've got some economic grades over economic widths that we have to follow up, because at any second, something material could change in your favor. We just don't have enough information. So there will be a percentage of drill meterage allocated to some of these earlier stage targets, but the bulk of it will go to resource expansion and drilling out targets that are on echelon or along trend of existing resources and existing gold zones, where we have a high degree of confidence that we can add more. So just to highlight before I get into a couple of the specific zones, this is a very large land package. It's one of the largest, if not the largest, of any of the explorers in the region. We can control a 43-kilometer portion of the Senegal-Mali Shear Zone, which is related to several multi-billion-dollar deposits, multi-million-ounce deposits in the region. Likewise, we control an 11-kilometer splay of the main transcurrent, which was also related to several large deposits in the region. Our target model is working. We're looking for something big, something that has scale, something that can make a difference for our investors. The initial resource, like I said, is about 1.1 million ounces at an average grade of 1.5 grams per ton, and that's combining inferred, measured, and indicated. And that number, I think it's likely going to grow materially. There are 24 gold zones known to date, and the overwhelming majority of them have seen minimal exploration, and they're virtually all open along strike and to depth. And there's just so much to be done on this property, but we have to focus our efforts and take a systematic approach, going after what we think is the best targets. And again, the best targets being which ones show the potential to have scale and size. So this year, we'd like to spend about $4 million. And we touched on the program high level in the previous slides. And there's about 30,000 meters of drilling there. Let's call it 20,000 planned and about 10,000 meters of contingency. So we can do a deep dive into each and every one of these zones, but I think for the sake of time, I'll just touch on the high priority zones. So at Gurbasi West North, which is the recent discovery, there was an existing deposit on strike to the south called Gurbasi West, and it had been there for quite a number of years. It's about 200,000 ounces at around a gram. And up here, there was really not much going on. There was some very weak soil geochemistry, but it was all covered by overburden and laterite and brush and so on. But like I said, we ran some auger lines and got some pretty good hits in the auger. And when we drill an auger hole, we take 2 samples per hole. We take 1 sample at the bottom of the laterite and another sample at the top of the saprolite. And if we get a good hit in the assay on both samples, then we know with a higher degree of certainty that we've got we've drilled into a gold zone. And the question just really is, to what extent? And that's when you follow up with a more substantial drill program. And so we did that with Aircore and RC, and we hooked into the widest gold system that we've seen on the property to date. Core hole 009 drilled almost 160 meters of continuous mineralization. And so this blob of mineralization is likely going to turn out to be bigger than Gurbasi West. We don't know. We haven't modeled the resources. We haven't updated the 43-101. But when you talk about the prospectivity of this feature, this is a cross section of one of the better holes that was drilled. I just touched on it, DD09. You can see towards the end of the hole, we hit 1.56 grams over 68 meters. And this system is open to depth and to a certain extent open to the south. This is a long section of the core part of this initial discovery. And I won't go through it in a ton of detail, but if you want to refer to it, you're more than welcome to. This is probably, for me, a more compelling picture. So this is just a zoomed out view of the Gurbasi West deposit here and the new discovery of Gurbasi West North. But we also control the next 8 kilometers to the north. You can see where we've demarcated where we believe the main transcurrent is, or a splay of the main transcurrent. And you can see the concentration of gold soil anomalies from the soil sampling we did up here. And we just covered it in a grid, and the spacing's pretty wide. But it would suggest that this sort of mineralized trend will likely continue in some capacity. And, you know, when you think that you've got 8 more kilometers to the north to explore, you could see that this could potentially be an area that could host something big, something substantial. And there are targets all over the place. And we have soils running over 9 grams, 9,300 ppb gold. So we really like this feature. And this will be one of the higher priorities. Mogiafara South, which, as I touched on, is the largest deposit we have to date. is an interesting one. It's proximal to where we believe the Senegal Mali shear zone is. You can see I should mention that the resources are pit constrained for the entire resource statement. And you can see the pit outlines here in black. And we did a IP survey, or excuse me, a walking magnetic survey here. And one of the things that jumped out to us was the high correlation between gold zones and magnetic highs. And when you step back and look at it in a more regional context in terms of all the soil anomalies along trend of the existing deposit, and the fact that this deposit is very shallow, the majority of these holes don't really go below 70 vertical meters. There's a reasonable expectation that this system could get potentially a lot bigger. And I zoom out and I'm looking at the same image, but I'm looking at the entire survey that we conducted here. And you can see the pits here, but you can also see that there's a lot of other targets in the area. You can see the grab sampling, you can see the soils, a lot of really good soil anomalies. So there are a lot of existing targets along trend and along strike above and beyond the existing deposit that's still very shallow. So we really like this target. And this will be one of the other high priorities as well. And regionally, it sits in the right spot. Going back to what I touched on here, all these deposits, all these big deposits, Lulo 10 plus, Gunkoto 5 plus, Fekola 6 or 7 now, they all sit proximal to the east of the Senegal Mali shear. And that's where we believe the most prospective areas are. So I see that I only got 6 or 7 minutes left. Do you want me to, Julian, do you want me to stop and take some questions, or do you want me to keep going? I got 1 or 2 more slides.
Well, we have, it's 23, we have 7 minutes, so you can finish, no problem.
Oh, okay. The other priority is the Burana East Northeast trend. There's 200,000+ ounces of inferred, measured, and indicated resource. We found this area hosts some of the better grades we've seen on the property, which makes it quite compelling. But in terms of finding more, the trend to the northeast of Burana East is completely open, and it has one of the highest concentrations of artisanal mining we've seen anywhere on the property. And there's some big artisanal operations in this part of the world, and so as we go in this direction, we'll just go down. You can see Burana East here. Now we've moved up another kilometer or 2 to the northeast. You can see the extent of the artisanal mining. It's all black cross hatched here. It's a little bit faded, but if you can see it. And we drilled a couple of holes going back about 2 years ago, and 2 holes in particular, we just drilled underneath the artisanal area. We got 2 grams or 1.97 grams over 30 meters. And that was only a 50-meter hole. And it was actually the bottom 30 meters that ended in mineralization. And there was another hole we drilled about 300 meters to the south of it that got 2 grams over 5 meters. But again, it was that bottom 5 meters that ended in mineralization. So there's something very significant going on along this northeast trend from Burana East all the way up to SOA. And it's seen very, very little exploration. And so we need to follow up this area. It's a little earlier target. There's no resources here yet. But this is a really excellent target. And so this would be our top 3 priority between Mogiafara South, Gurbassi West, West-North trend, and then this Burana East, Northeast trend. There are some other very compelling gold zones in the area. Probably Manicoto would be the other one. And we had some very good drill success here. The last few holes we drilled 1.8 grams over 30 meters. Again, a zone ending in mineralization. And we're seeing a lot of parallel flat plunging gold zones here. And, this could also be a very interesting one. It's located a little further north than everything else is. So it's all the way up towards the top of the property. And so it would need to be something pretty special, because you're starting to talk about trucking ore probably a little bit too far. But this whole area here in the southern part of the property, it's all within sort of 10, 12 kilometers. And in some instances, you know, it's within a kilometer away, these two deposits. So again, we're looking to find something substantial. We have a very large land package that's in the best area you'd want to be. And we already have some gold zones that look like they could get a lot bigger. And those are our highest priority targets. But at the same time, there's other stuff on the property we need to follow up on. So I'm happy to take questions. It's a lot of information if there's something I missed, but otherwise that's good for me, Julian.
Okay, perfect. Well, first of all, thank you very much for the presentation, Jared. I think you guys have a very big piece of land, so it takes some time to cover everything you have. Obviously, 30 minutes is a short time to do that. We still have 3 minutes. One question from Jürgen. How do you assess the threat to your company posed by the uncertain political situation in Mali?
Yeah, it's a great question. Like I said, I've been in Mali since 2011. And I guess the best way I can address that is we have never had any issues in terms of getting permits renewed or getting permits, getting new permits. For example, the permit that Mogi Afara South sits on was a permit that we were granted directly from the government just by making the application. You know, going back to the political issues, you can see Mali's sort of like a shape like a bow tie, like a diagonal bow tie. And you can see this kind of pinch here right in the middle of the country. This area up here in the Saharan region is where some of the conflict is, and the tribal conflict, and where they have some of the security issues. The mining camp in Mali, both in Southwest Mali, where the Yanfalila mining camp is, and the Senegal Mali Shear Zone mining camp is really along the western border of the country with Senegal. And we haven't had any security issues there. And when I travel there, I don't travel with security. I just travel with my technical team. And so I would say that the perception of Mali versus the actual reality is different. In fact, I'd say it's a pretty mining friendly jurisdiction if you were to compare it with perhaps some of the other jurisdictions in North America, in terms of getting applications and licenses processed and being able to hold large land packages to do exploration without expending a huge amount of money on, you know, like for instance, if you were to try to hold land packages like this in Nevada, you couldn't do it because of the claims fees. It would be absurd. So no, I really like Mali as a jurisdiction, and we haven't had any issues there.
Perfect. And another question, what's the likelihood to see a joint venture or a major stepping in with you, with your company within the next 12 months?
Sure. Well, I can't really address that question specifically, but I can just say more generally, all the big boys in the region know what we're up to. And, you know, if you look at what has facilitated M&A transactions in this part of the world in the past, they tend to step in when they see something that shows the potential for scale. So I think sometimes people focus on a metric like, oh, you got to get to 2 million ounces, or you got to get to 3. But I think more what it is if you start to demonstrate that you've hooked into a system that's big and it's going to be robust, these guys will act sooner versus later. So it's difficult to say, but if history is any indicator of what the future could be, you know, as soon as you're showing something that's potentially could be a standalone mine, the guys in the region can step in quite quickly.
All right, perfect. And our time is up, sadly. Jared, I want to thank you very much for participating in the 4th IIF. Great presentation. absolutely great land package you have there. So thank you for the update, and we'll be happy to follow your updates in the next few months.
Thank you, Julian. Appreciate it.
Perfect. Thank you.